Blake, I guess just let's start with sort of your why. Why did you and your family feel like it was right to join this lawsuit? Because it is a different lawsuit. It's trying to hold the state accountable. So why is this a fight that you guys wanted to join?
I think we have to go back to the event itself. And I think we have to go back to, honestly, the years leading up to the event. This camp was licensed for at least a decade. And as part of that license, there is a requirement that every camp has an emergency plan, which shall include an evacuation plan. And so there's absolute blame to be placed on Mystic for not having one, and that's undisputed at this point. But the chain of command now goes up to the state, and there was a rubber stamp license given year in and year out, despite the fact that that plan did not exist.
I think it mentions willful negligence, right? Is that what you believe has happened here?
I'd have to let the attorneys speak to exactly what you call it, but as a parent, it's so common sense to me that it takes this pain to a depth and a place that I really just can't even describe. There is no doubt in my mind, none, that if there was a plan in place, there was 100% chance that these girls would still be with us. And that is going to haunt me for the rest of my life. And so now the only thing that I can do and that these other parents can do is try and clear our conscience and ensure that this never, ever, ever happens to another innocent child again.
It's really hard to hear that, and just knowing that not only are you just in the depths of grief, but also feeling like it could have been avoided. I think that's probably what makes this just so much worse.
There's no doubt. I'd much rather still be naive. I'd much rather have no understanding of camp safety or lack thereof. But if losing a child wasn't enough, now having to advocate and point out that this really isn't about emotion. It's not about the sanctity of camp. It's not about any of these other things other than the obvious fact that before you can go back into session and host children under your custody, you must have a plan, and we need to right the wrongs that existed on the night of July 4th. It's that cut and dry, and it is almost stranger than fiction. And as I've said before, it hurts a lot worse too. But until these wrongs get righted, there's no way with a clear conscience I or anyone else for that matter should recommend sending their kid off to somewhere where nobody knows what to do in case of emergency.
I would imagine that you had faith. You put faith in the idea that that wasn't the case, that everyone knew what to do in case of emergency. Am I right there that you and your family and most of these other families and thousands of families across Texas have a lot of faith that when you put your child at camp, those plans are in place and everyone knows what to do?
1000%. I mean, if you think about the tenets of the laws that were in place and now the Heavens 27 Camp Safety Act, they revolve around very simple principles. Prevention, detection, training, response, and even still, these laws and these regulations are a fraction of what's required at other child care centers like daycares and schools. And one thing that I just can't reconcile in my own mind is, and speaking to you, maybe somebody will chime in and say they disagree with me, but have you ever heard anyone anyone complain about their children conducting fire drills at school. Never one time. I mean, we've all been in hundreds, if not thousands. I personally have never been in a fire, but I've never taken it for granted. As inconvenient as it might be, you never once take it for granted. And to think that at the core of what we're talking about in this lawsuit against the state and also Camp Mystic is just the deliberate oversight of not having a similar emergency plan and evacuation plan. It's beyond shocking. I really don't have words.
Now that we are in spring, we're getting to the time where I'm sure families are starting to think about where they're going to send their kids to camp. And you know that Camp Mystic, at least part of it, the Cypress Lake, has a plan. At least they say they've got a plan to reopen. How are you feeling knowing that that they've made the decision to move forward with an opening? How does that set with you?
Yeah, honestly, tons of emotions, right? As you would expect. I mean, we can't hide from the fact that our children paid the ultimate price. We're bereaved parents. The waves of grief are constant, and you never know at which point on the wave you'll be. So I can't deny the fact that there's a lot of grief and a lot of emotion involved with all of this. But what I've really tried to do for myself, just to keep my sanity more than anything else, is to stick to the facts. And so, no matter what you think about one camp versus another, and for the record, we are all for camp, but safety has to come first. So if safety has to come first, which is my North Star now and till the end of time, then you have to have an emergency plan before you can start accepting applications for next summer, or I guess now this summer. And I would just point out, if you go to Camp Mystic's website, they have a newly added safety page. And if you click the down arrow on emergency action plan, the exact quote is, "We are working with a safety consultant to help us review our emergency plans and procedures. A safety coordinator will be on staff this summer in order to keep our emergency action plans up to date, help us train, perform drills, and coordinate with local emergency services in preparation for various types of emergency." So in other words, they're still working on it. And to me, this isn't about physical location, right? If it were about physical location, those girls would have never been there to begin with. So I don't think that's an argument that anyone should hang their hat on as a parent sending an innocent, defenseless child. What we need to focus on is there's still February 24th, 2026, there's not an emergency plan at that camp. So to me, to talk about anything else is completely asinine.
I know that yesterday we saw from the lieutenant governor a push to say, hey, we don't think that the license should be renewed. And he talked about, more hearings to come. How did that feel to hear the lieutenant governor of this state? What it felt like to me was that he was trying to press pause, and he was trying to say, Camp Mystic, I think you shouldn't move forward with reopening. How did you take what he said?
Honestly, our state's legislative system, which I had zero purview into before all this, has actually been a bright spot from July on. And Lieutenant Governor's comments yesterday, I think, reinforced that, and has renewed a good bit of my faith just in humanity in general. As Lieutenant Governor said, the facts surrounding the deaths of these 27 girls are still being determined. The legislative process established this state-led investigation, which is still ongoing. And I can speak for myself. but my family wholeheartedly agrees that no camp should be licensed until their failures are first identified and then um, rectified. And until that happens, how can anyone feel good about sending their child to be under the care of somebody else?
What would you say that Texas families need to think about? Like I said earlier, this is a time of year where they're probably making the decisions about who's going where, how long they're going to stay. What are the things that you would say Texas families, questions they should ask or things they should look for?
Um, it's a great question. And as it was said um, from several senators and representatives through this whole legislative process, our state's parents are going to be the ultimate enforcer of whether or not our children are safe. And that goes for whether you send your child to sleepaway camp or send them down the street to the library or another child care center. And so all I would say is common sense is your best friend. And make sure you fully understand what the camp's resources are when it comes to training, detection, response, and just general preparation. I mean, these are things I know that in today's world we can take for granted. We oftentimes don't notice the smoke detectors or the fire suppression or the exit signs or the emergency evacuation plan, but we take them for granted because they work. And so now that we've uncovered what I can only describe as a look past part of child safety in this state and across the country, I think it's really, really important that parents just ask the common sense questions.
A couple more things for you, because I want to make sure that I'm clear here. And I don't remember if it was you. I remember watching one of the hearings where several of you guys were testifying very early in the process. And I don't remember if it was you who said it, but someone made the point that to the idea that there was no plan to evacuate is complete and total failure. Like they can say they have emergency plans in place, but if you don't have a plan on how to get children out of cabins, that is no emergency plan. Am I right? And that's how you guys feel about this.
1,000%. The evacuation plan was quite the opposite. The literal plan was to stay in place. And again, all the facts are out there. There's really not much to dispute in terms of timeline. There was a code red warning received at 1:14 a.m. and hundreds of girls were evacuated. A number of them did it under their own will, and thank goodness they did. There are untold number of heroes that put the plan aside and just did what their common sense was telling them to do. But for 8 and 9-year-old girls, the youngest girls in the entire camp, for them to be left alone for hours and hours will haunt me for the rest of my life. And to think, just apply it to your own daily life, or when you get on an airplane, or when you walk into a commercial building or an apartment building, there are emergency plans so that we don't have to respond in the middle of an emergency. Emergencies are never planned for. You can argue they're acts of God or whatever else, but the good news is God gave us the free will to be prepared, and the camp was not prepared.
Blake, just before we wrap up, how are you? I know Lila had two younger sisters. How are they? How's your family doing?
Um, we're doing okay. My daughters are still absolute joys and lights in our life. They love and miss their sister dearly, but they're 6 and 2 years old, respectively. And so I think they have a certain innocence to them where I don't think they fully appreciate what's happened, but it's a good thing because that innocence, that pureness, allows us to focus on what we know Lila to be, which was a phenomenal big sister. Sorry, um, phenomenal big sister, a great friend, a huge heart, a ton of fun, and just someone that we were blessed to know.
I could tell she was blessed to have you as a dad too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
so sorry. I'm so sorry, Blake. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to say?
I can never miss an opportunity to remind the world that SEAL Stewart is still missing, and to think in the depths of all of this agony that us having Lila could make us lucky compared to what hell the Stewards are living is just unfathomable. So please, 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 if I can, reinforce that the search for Seal must continue, and that sweet baby needs to be brought home to her parents and her family.
Thank you, Blake. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
Thank you.